Your bank is making more money from your savings account than you are. Not a little more, dramatically more. And the part that should genuinely bother you, they're doing it with your money, using your money as the raw material, while paying you just enough to feel like you're winning. Most people have never thought about what actually happens the moment they deposit money into a savings account. They see a number go up. They see an interest rate. They feel responsible. They feel safe. That feeling is real. The math behind it is something else entirely. Here's the number that changes everything. The average American savings account pays around 0.5% interest. Even the best high-yield accounts top out around 4% to 5% right now. Inflation in the US has averaged 3% to 4% over the last several years. Do that math and your safe savings account is either barely keeping up or quietly losing ground every single month. But that's only half the story. The half nobody talks about is what your bank does with your money the second it lands in their system. Meet Sarah and James. Both 28. Both living in Austin, Texas. Both just got their first real job. $65,000 a year. Both have $10,000 saved. Same starting point, same city, same financial moment in life. One decision is about to send them in completely different directions for the next 20 years. Sarah does what her parents always told her to do. She opens a high-yield savings account, deposits her $10,000, and feels proud. The bank is offering 4.5% interest. She does the math. That's $450 a year. She sets up automatic transfers of $400 a month from her paycheck. She tells her boyfriend she's being smart with money. He agrees. Her mom tells her she's doing everything right. James takes the same $10,000 and puts it into a low-cost total market index fund. He also sets up $400 monthly contributions. He doesn't tell anyone because there's nothing exciting to say. He has no interest rate to quote at dinner. Just a brokerage account and a number that moves up and down with the market. His dad calls it gambling. James doesn't argue. On day one, Sarah looks like the responsible one. James looks like he's taking unnecessary risk. In 20 years, one of them will look back at this moment and wish they'd made a different call. And it's probably not who you think. Sarah's savings account is doing exactly what it promised. In year one, her $10,000 earns $400 in fees and interest. Her $400 monthly contributions add $4,800. She ends the year with approximately $15,400. The interest rate is real. The number is growing. Everything feels exactly right. Here's what's also happening that Sarah cannot see. Her bank is taking that $15,400 and lending it out. Mortgage loans at 7%. Personal loans at 11%. Credit card balances at 24%. The bank is using Sarah's money as inventory. Every dollar she deposits becomes a dollar the bank can lend at 2 to 6 times the interest rate they're paying her. Sarah earns 4.5%. The bank earns 7% to 24% on that same dollar. The spread between what they pay her and what they charge borrowers is their profit. Sarah is not a customer in this transaction. She's a supplier. Psychologists call this the illusion of ownership. We feel in control of something the moment we can see its value increase, even when the underlying system is extracting far more value than it's returning. Sarah sees her balance grow and feels like she's winning. She cannot see the bank's balance growing faster on the same money. Year one for James looks worse on the surface. The market has a flat year. His $10,000 grows to $10,300. He adds $4,800 in contributions. He ends the year at approximately $15,100, slightly behind Sarah. His dad says he told him so. James doesn't check the account again for 3 months. But here's the thing about index funds that savings accounts structurally cannot replicate. The stock market doesn't pay you a fixed percentage of your deposit and keep the rest. It gives you ownership. Every dollar James puts in buys him a fractional share of thousands of companies. When those companies grow, and over long periods they consistently do, James's ownership grows with them. He's not a supplier. He's a part owner. That's a completely different financial relationship. The average annual return of the total U.S. stock market over the last 30 years is approximately 10% to 11%. Sarah's savings account is capped at whatever the Federal Reserve sets interest rates at. When rates drop, and they always eventually drop, her 4.5% becomes 0.5% overnight. James's index fund has no ceiling. By year 3, Sarah has done everything right. She hasn't touched the account. She's contributed every single month. Her balance sits at approximately $25,800. The interest has compounded exactly as advertised. She shows her mom the number, and her mom tells her she's being so responsible. Sarah feels genuinely good about this. James is at approximately $24,900 after a mixed 3 years in the market. One good year, one flat year, one year where his portfolio dropped 8%, and he felt briefly sick looking at it. He didn't sell. He kept contributing. His total is slightly behind Sarah's. On paper, she's still winning. Here's where the real math starts to separate them. Sarah's 4.5% interest rate just got cut. The Federal Reserve dropped rates. Her bank sent an email. Her new rate is 2.1%. Same account. Same bank, same money. Half the return, effective immediately. Her $400 monthly contributions keep coming in, but the engine powering her growth just lost half its horsepower. She has no recourse. The rate is whatever the bank decides it is. James's index fund doesn't have this problem. His return isn't set by a committee meeting in Washington. It's set by the collective earnings of thousands of companies across the global economy. This is called rate dependency risk. Your savings account return is entirely controlled by an external institution whose financial interests are structurally opposed to yours. The bank wants to pay you as little as possible. That's not cynicism. That's their fiduciary duty to their shareholders. By year 5, the gap is starting to show. Sarah's account with the reduced rate and continued. Contribution sits at approximately $37,000. James's portfolio at an average 9% annual return with the same contributions is at approximately $42,500. James has pulled ahead by $5,500. His dad has stopped bringing up the gambling. Comment. But the more important number isn't the balance. It's the trajectory. Sarah's account grows in a straight line, contributions plus a fixed percentage. James's account grows on a curve. The curve is barely visible at year 5. By year 10, it becomes impossible to ignore. Year 10. Sarah's balance at an average 2.5% rate over the decade, accounting for rate fluctuations. It sits at approximately $63,000. She's contributed $48,000 over 10 years on top of her original $10,000. Her interest earnings total roughly $5,000. Her account grew almost entirely from her own contributions, not from the money working for her. James's portfolio at year 10, averaging 9% to 10% annual returns with the same contribution pattern, sits at approximately $89,000 to $95,000. He contributed the exact same amount as Sarah. The extra $26,000 to $32,000 is pure compounding. Money his money made. That then made more money. That then made more money again. Your brain genuinely cannot feel exponential growth. Neuroscientists studying financial decision-making have found that humans are cognitively wired for linear thinking. We estimate future growth by projecting the present rate forward in a straight line. Compound growth doesn't move in a straight line. It accelerates. The acceleration is invisible for years, and then suddenly overwhelming. Sarah's brain sees her balance growing steadily and feels satisfied. She has no sensory experience of what she's missing. Here's the hidden truth that explains why savings accounts have survived as the default recommendation for middle-class families for over a century, despite consistently underperforming every major alternative. Savings accounts don't just store money, they store anxiety. The average middle-class family carries a specific financial fear. The fear of losing what they have, not the fear of not gaining more, the fear of losing what's already there. Savings accounts are architecturally designed to address that fear. FDIC insured, fixed rate, number only goes up. It's not a wealth-building tool. It's a psychological comfort tool, dressed up as a financial product. And the people who sell it, banks, are extraordinarily good at marketing comfort. Every savings account advertisement since the 1950s has featured the same emotional core. Security, responsibility, family, safety. Not returns, not growth, not wealth. Safety. Because safety is what the middle class is actually buying when they open a savings account. The financial return is almost secondary to the emotional transaction that psychologists call this loss aversion marketing, when a product's primary value proposition is the elimination of a negative feeling rather than the delivery of a positive outcome. People will accept dramatically lower returns to access it. Sarah isn't getting 4.5% because 4.5% is fair compensation for her money. She's getting 4.5% because that's the minimum the bank calculated would keep her from moving her money somewhere else. The question nobody asks is, what would you do with your money if you weren't afraid? Because the answer to that question is exactly what James did. And the 20-year math on that answer is about to get uncomfortable. 20 years. Same income, same contributions, same starting amount. Two completely different destinations. Sarah's savings account over 20 years, accounting for the rate fluctuations that always happen across 2 decades, averaging around 2.5% to 3% annually. sits at approximately $128,000 to $135,000. She contributed $10,000 upfront and $400 every single month for 20 years. Total contributions, $106,000. Her interest earnings across the entire 20 years, roughly $22,000 to $29,000. Her money made her less than $30,000 over 2 decades. The rest came from her own. Pocket. James's index fund portfolio over 20 years at an average 9% to 10% annual return with identical contribution sits at approximately $310,000 to $340,000. Same. $106,000 total contributed. The other $204,000 to $234,000 is pure compounding. Money that made money that made money that made money. He didn't work for it. He didn't manage it. He just didn't interrupt it. The gap between them is $175,000 to $205,000. That is not a rounding error. That is a house down payment. That is a child's full college education. That is 10 years of retirement income. All of it lost. Not to bad investments, not to market crashes, not to bad luck, but to a savings account that felt safe. Sarah didn't make a reckless decision. She made the decision her parents made, that her parents' made, that an entire financial system spent a century conditioning her family to make. And that conditioning is the real story here. Here is the reframe that changes everything about how you see. This Sarah didn't choose a savings account because she researched her options and concluded it was optimal. She chose it because it was the only option that felt emotionally available to her. Every adult she trusted used savings accounts. Every bank advertisement she'd ever seen promoted savings accounts. Every conversation about being responsible with money centered on savings accounts. Her brain didn't evaluate the savings account against alternatives. It pattern matched to the behavior of everyone she trusted and concluded that this must be the right answer. Psychologists call this availability heuristic. Your brain doesn't calculate probability or return on investment from scratch. It reaches for the most mentally available example of what people like you do in situations like this. And for the middle class, the most mentally available financial behavior across generations has been, put it in savings. Don't risk it. Keep it safe. The banks didn't just create a product. They colonized a mental category. The mental category of responsible money behavior became synonymous with their product specifically. That's not an accident. That's a century of marketing working exactly as intended. And here's the part that makes it personal. The people who built that mental category, the people who spent 100 years making savings accounts, feel like the responsible choice. Do not keep their own wealth in savings accounts. Not even close. Institutional money sits in treasuries, index funds, real estate, private equity. The financial system is entirely comfortable with its own money being in growth assets. It just needed yours to stay somewhere more convenient. So what should you actually do? Here is the honest answer, based on everything the math just showed. A savings account has one legitimate use. Your emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Liquid. Accessible, not subject to market swings. That money belongs in a high-yield savings account because you might need it tomorrow, and you cannot afford to have it down 15% when the furnace breaks. That is the correct use of a savings account, and it is the only correct use. Everything above your emergency fund, every dollar beyond that 3 to 6 month cushion, has a better home. A low-cost total market index fund inside a Roth IRA gives you tax-free growth, ownership of the broader economy, and a 20-year return that a savings account structurally cannot match. If your employer offers a 401k match, that comes first. It's an immediate 50% to 100% return that no savings account rate will ever touch. The math is not complicated. The behavior change is, because you're not just changing where your money goes, you're changing what responsible feels like. And that is a psychological shift, not a financial one. If nobody sat you down when you got your first paycheck and explained the difference between storing money and growing money, that's exactly the conversation this channel exists to have. Drop in the comments. Are you a Sarah or a James right now? Be honest. Most people commenting are a Sarah who just realized it. The interesting ones are the Jameses who almost became Sarahs and want to talk about what stopped them. The most expensive financial habit you have is probably the one that feels the most responsible.